A Nightmare on Elm Street. Suffer the Children. Chapter 4. Alex spent the night tossing and turning, unable to get to sleep. Her brain just wouldn't shut up. The last 24 hours replaying over and over again in her mind. The nightmare about being back in therapy, that freak and what he had wanted to do to her, the weird daydream she'd had in Mr. Mycroft's class, the cuts on her arm, the rhyme written into her notebook while she was still dreaming. What did it all mean? Every time she fell asleep, closing around her like a shroud, Alex snapped awake again. I don't want another nightmare visit, she decided. Better to stay awake and decide about the drug trial in the morning. At least if she fell asleep there, the doctors would make sure nothing bad happened, right? It took forever for dawn to come. The night hours crawling past. Alex kept cranking up the volume on her iPod to stop herself from dozing off. At last, the alarm clock by her bed sprang into life, announcing it was time to get up. Alex silenced the ringing with a violent slap, then swung her legs out of bed. She felt utterly exhausted, and the bathroom mirror didn't help, dark shadows having appeared under her eyes during the night. I'll look like a fucking raccoon if this keeps up, Alex thought ruefully. Getting paid to sleep all day was sounding more attractive by the minute. She turned on the shower, letting her mind wander. If she did go along for the drug trial, it would be a chance to see Peter again, but outside school. He was a geek, but he was still kind of cute. Get that hair of his sorted out, maybe some better clothes, he might be presentable. Alex stepped under the hot water and shook her head in dismay. What am I thinking about? Don't get involved and you won't get hurt. Getting the hots for a geek was not going to help things get better for her at school, that's for sure. Alex poured shower gel over her chest, rubbing it into a lather. She started massaging the bubbles across her breast, the palm of one hand lingering as if brushed back and forth across the nipples. Her other hand spread more gel across her abdomen, the cool liquid dribbling down between her legs. I wonder what Peter looks like naked, she wondered, her fingers moving backwards and forwards. Get him out of those dork squad clothes and he might be... Alex, breakfast is ready! The voice from downstairs broke into her thoughts, pushing the warm sensations to one side. Alex smiled. I swear Mom must be psychic. She always knows when to spoil my fun. 10 minutes later, Alex was downstairs, dressed in jeans and a pale blue long-sleeve top, her hair still damp from the shower. She munched on a piece of toast, dreading the conversation to come. The door to her room had been open when she got home the previous night, so there was little doubt her mom had been snooping again. Normally that wouldn't be a problem. Alex had nothing to hide. But the bloody sink and tissues, the crimson stain on the sheets, that was going to take some explaining. Joyce was sipping a cup of coffee, worry lines evident around her eyes. Alex, is everything all right? Everything's fine, Mom. It's just... Here it comes. I went into your room yesterday to change the sheets, and I found one of them in the wastebasket. Yeah, I had an accident in the night. What kind of accident? Alex decided causing embarrassment was her best defense. A woman's accident? All right, Mom? Jesus, I don't want to talk about it. I understand, Joyce said. But I noticed a stain on your mattress as well. It wasn't down there. Alex couldn't believe her mom was persisting with this. I woke up in the night and didn't feel well, all right? So I sat up and that's when it started, okay? Joyce didn't look convinced, but she let it slide. If you say so, dear. Alex rolled her eyes. I'm out of here. She dumped the remains of her breakfast in the trash, grabbed her bag, and headed for the door. Alex, Joyce called after her. You can always talk to me about anything. You know that, don't you? Yeah, Alex replied, already halfway gone. See you later. Have a nice day, dear, Joyce called after her. Alex kept walking, not looking back. That's it. No way am I going to school, she decided. I've had enough embarrassment and humiliation for one day. Lloyd just got himself another cut of Luke's commission. The Katja Institute was an angular building of concrete and glass, architecturally daring in its day. But more than 30 years had passed since then, and now it displayed the blocky, brutal look that screamed early 70s. Moisture had stained the walls, while dark, tinted glass gave its exterior a sinister look. Chris was contemplating the Institute from the parking lot. He had ambitions of becoming an architect, but his father was intent on pushing Chris into sports. Make your fortune before 30, then do what you like with the rest of your life. But 30 was so far in the future, it might as well be 300. The sound of a car horn announced Heather's arrival in her battered convertible. She waved to the tall teenager. "Hey, you decided to come after all," she said happily. "I was worried it was going to be only me and the stoners. What changed your mind?" Chris shrugged. "Had another argument with my dad when he found out I was in detention for fighting. You'd think he'd be on my side, but no. He tells me to turn the other cheek and all that shit." "So you decided to stage a little rebellion of your own?" "Something like that." Chris examined the crumpled front of Heather's car. "I see why you need the money. You can have half of my fee if it'll help." "You sure?" "Yeah, I'm not doing this for the cash." "Well, that's just so sweet of you." Heather smiled and gave him a quick kiss on the cheek. "Thank you, Chris." They were soon joined by the others, Lloyd arriving last, shuffling along in a world of his own. "Hey, dudes, glad you could make it," he said, nodding his approval. "Let's get inside," Kat suggested. "I didn't come here to spend my morning in the parking lot, Lloyd." "Take a chill pill, illustrated lady," he replied. "I'll groove on in, find my bud Luke, make sure we're good to go, okay?" Peter watched the dope-addled Lloyd saunter inside. You gotta wonder if he got dropped on his head as a baby. Alex looked nervous about what lay ahead. "Don't you have to be 21 or something to take part in a drug trial?" "Not necessarily," Peter said. "Minimum age ranges from adult studies, varies from state to state. I looked it up on the net last night. The lower limit is 16 in Ohio." "The nights must be one long party at your place," Kat commented. Chris saw Lloyd emerge and offered them 2 thumbs up. "Looks like we're on. Anybody wants out, now's the time to leave." Kat was already marching towards the entrance. Heather shrugged and followed, Peter tagging along behind. Chris turned to Alex. "What about you?" "I guess I'm going in," she said eventually. He smiled at her. "Then let's go." Once inside, the 6 students were ushered to a waiting area. A quiet space with lime green sofas, brown carpet, and air freshenants placed on every surface. Each was given a fistful of forms to fill in, detailing their family's medical history, sleeping habits, and recollections of any recent dreams. Alex bit her bottom lip, uncertain what to write. "I've been having some pretty intense nightmares lately. Should I put those down?" she asked. Lloyd shook his head. "That whole section is like optional anyways. Just put the usual stuff." "The usual stuff?" Peter looked at his replies on the forms. "All of it?" Lloyd smirked. "Luke says they got people writing some pretty weird shit on these forms, you know? Kinky sex dreams and stuff. You wouldn't believe some of the things he's told me about, man. If you want your money, make sure you put 21 as your age. Better safe than sorry." Alex decided to keep her nightmares and daydreams to herself. As for medical history, she recycled the old excuse about a vicious cat to explain the fresh wounds and old scars on her arms. A pale youth in jeans, t-shirt, and a white lab coat appeared in the waiting area, his lapel badge naming him as Luke. "Hello, is everybody all done with their forms?" Lloyd waved at his friend. "Hey, Lukester, how's it hanging, man?" "To the ground, dude, to the fucking ground." Luke counted the volunteers. 6 of you, good. All right, if you'll hand back your forms, I'll take you to the testing area. "What about our money?" Kat asked. "Straight to business with you, huh?" Luke reached into his pocket and withdrew a clutch of envelopes. He handed one to each of the teenagers, then returned the rest to his pocket. "Inside, you'll find a check for $320. Write in your name as the payee and bank it whenever you want. Check should clear within 3 working days." "I was expecting cash," Kat said unhappily. "Well, you can't always get what you want," Luke replied. "But if you try sometime, you just might find you get what you need," Lloyd chimed in. "Excellent Stones reference, dude. Now that was a Class A album, man." "Whatever," Heather interrupted. "Can we get on with this? I have to take my car to the garage later, and they close at 5 tonight. "If you will all follow me," Luke said, and led them along a corridor to the far end of the building. He opened a door bearing a plaque, "Morpheus Pharmaceuticals Consulting Physicians G.F. Dower, D. Carey." This is where the test will be run. We've already got cots set up for all of you. Beyond the door was a rectangular room with 4 hospital beds on either side. Gentle overhead lights illuminated the space, while Venetian blinds masked the windows set into one wall. A long mirror was mounted on the opposite wall, stretching sideways above the beds. Air conditioning maintained a quiet hum in the background, while the ever-present scent of air freshener leaked from the room into the corridor. In a much less masculine voice as he had used with Alex earlier, "We don't have to get undressed, do we?" Peter asked nervously. Luke laughed. "No, you stay in your street clothes, but we would ask you to remove shoes and any sharp or valuable objects, such as watches or jewelry. Put them in the lockers by your beds, and you'll get them back once the test is concluded." He consulted his wristwatch. "Okay, Doctors Dower and Carey will be along to see you soon to explain the procedure to you guys. Why don't you go in and make yourselves comfortable? I'll tell them you're ready." The 6 students wandered into the room, choosing their beds and following Luke's instructions. Alex opted for a cot beneath the mirror, so she was facing the windows. Peter took the bed on her right, nearest the door, while Kat was on her left. Heather, Chris, and Lloyd divided the beds beneath the windows between them, Lloyd choosing the one near the door. Within a few minutes, 2 gray-haired men in white lab coats entered, introducing themselves as Dr. Dower and Carey. Dower was portly and round-faced, while his associate cut a taller, more patrician figure. Carey did most of the talking as Dower moved among the teenagers, attached monitoring devices to their hands, foreheads, and chest. He also checked the veins in their arms, tapping the inside of the right elbows. "My colleague is checking that we'll have no problems finding a suitable vein for the injection," Carey explained. "He is also ensuring none of you are intravenous drug users. The substance under trial here is an anti-insomnia serum, and previous tests have shown it can cause side effects among heavy drug users. Now, we have your full medical histories. Does anybody have anything they wish to add or ask before we begin the trial?" Peter raised his hand, bringing a smile from Carey. "You don't have to do that, son. Just ask your question." "Oh, okay. What can we expect to happen?" "A good question. You will each receive an injection. Half of you will be injected with a harmless liquid placebo that should have no effect whatsoever. The other half will receive the serum and should fall into a deep, restful slumber. Previous volunteers have reported some vivid dreams while asleep, but none have experienced any distress during those dreams. Once everybody has been injected, we will lower the lights in here and leave you to drift off. In 5 hours' time, Dr. Dower and I will return to wake you. After that, we'll have some questions for you to answer, verbally, and another form to fill in. The whole process should be completed by 4 this afternoon, and then you'll be free to go. Any more questions?" The silence in the room seemed to satisfy Carey. He smiled at them benevolently. "You know, I grew up in Springwood. This is my hometown. It's changed a lot since my day, of course." Dower smiled at his colleague, indicating everything was ready. Carey nodded. "Well, enough small talk. It only remains for us to wish you all a good afternoon's sleep. We will return in a few hours to see how you're doing." The 2 doctors departed, leaving the teenagers alone. "Morpheus Pharmaceuticals," Peter said when the doctors had gone. "I web-searched all the major U.S. drug developers, but couldn't find Morpheus." "Stop worrying, man," Lloyd replied. "Luke told me it's a new company. What I want to know is, why name it after that black dude from The Matrix?" "Morpheus was the Greek god of sleep and dreams," Alex said. "Her dad used to read to her from a book of myths and legends when she was a child to help her get to sleep. She could still remember every detail from the cover of that book, but she couldn't remember what her dad's face looked like anymore. Maybe I'll see him in my dream now, if I get the drug and not the placebo." "Cool," Lloyd decided. Footsteps became audible, along with a curious noise like a mechanical mouse. "All right, everybody, here comes the juice." The door opened and Luke appeared, pushing a trolley with a squeaky wheel. On its gleaming metal surface sat 6 kidney-shaped bowls, each containing a syringe. Beside them was another bowl filled with the cotton balls, along with a bottle of rubbing alcohol and a box of Band-Aids. Luke stopped and smiled at the volunteers. "Who wants to be first?" "Bring it on, dude," Lloyd urged, and was rewarded with the first jab of a needle. Heather was next, followed by Chris and Kat. When Luke reached Alex, she drew back when she saw how big the syringe was. He noticed her discomfort and grinned. "Not fond of needles, huh?" Alex nodded nervously. "Don't worry, it's just a little prick. You won't feel a thing." "I bet you say that to all the girls," Lloyd called from across the room. Alex grimaced as the needle was inserted into her arm, but once the skin was broken, the process was uncomfortable more than painful. Luke emptied the syringe into her and then swiftly withdrew the needle. He swabbed the puncture wound clean and covered it with a Band-Aid. "That'll stop any infection." Alex broke into a smile. "I thought it would be more painful than that." Luke shrugged. "Sorry, I'll try to do worse next time if you want." She settled back into the pillows on her bed and breathed out. Already there was a faint numbness creeping up her arm, a pleasant warmth spreading out through her. Alex felt as though she was afloat inside her own body, swimming beneath the skin. It would only need a jolt to knock her free. Luke pushed the squeaking trolley round to Peter and administered the final injection. Once the procedure was complete for everybody, he retreated to the doorway. "I'm going to dim the lights now and leave you in peace. If you do need anything, there's a small call switch above each bed. Just hit the button and I'll be here inside 30 seconds, okay? Sweet dreams, everybody." Alex was suddenly sleepy, hardly able to keep her eyes open. She didn't notice Luke leave as much as she felt him leave after dimming the lights. "Guess I didn't get the placebo," she thought to herself. As darkness overtook her, Alex remembered an old TV show the local channel was fond of showing first thing on Sunday mornings. Every episode finished the same way, with all the members of a hillbilly family retiring to bed. A phrase from the show escaped to her lips. "Good night, Mary Ellen," Alex said with a giggle. "Good night, Jim Bob." Then she was asleep. Chris woke suddenly. "Where the hell am I? This certainly isn't my bedroom." Then he remembered the drug trial. Getting the injection, feeling drowsy. I must have nodded off. Sitting up, he could see the others still asleep on their beds. Guess I got the placebo. Probably just as well. Coming here seemed like a good idea last night, a little harmless rebellion against the father. But what if the serum contains some sort of steroid? High school athletes were not usually subject to drug testing, but any scouts would probably insist on making sure he was clean before offering him a scholarship. I wonder how much longer I have to wait before I can get up. Chris decided to find out who else had gotten the placebo. "Hey, psst, Heather, you awake?" he whispered. But the girl in the next bed did not respond, her breathing remaining deep and steady. Chris tried calling to the other side of the room. "Psst, hey Alex, you asleep?" Still no response. He raised his voice a little and called out again, but none of the others responded. Weird. I thought half of us were getting the placebo, not just me. Chris remembered what Luke had said and hit the call switch over his bed. It was probably only meant for emergencies, but being wide awake in a bed for the rest of the day sounded boring. Maybe they'd cut him some slack and bring him a magazine or something. Chris waited and waited, but nobody responded. He hit the red button again without success. Screw this. If they won't come to me, I'll go and find them, he decided. Chris swung his feet round and down onto the black and white checked linoleum floor. He stood up and swayed a little, momentarily dizzy. Whoa! Whatever was in that placebo might not be a sleep serum, but it delivered a kick. One of the others began murmuring in their sleep. It was Alex. Her face a frown of intense concentration. Chris moved closer to hear what she was saying. "Dad, turn around. Look at me. I'm up here. I'm up here." She rolled over, punched her pillow, and settled down again, her breathing becoming regular once more. "Sweet dreams," Chris muttered. "I don't think so." He walked to the door and peered out through a glass panel. The corridor beyond was dark, too, a light at the far end providing the only illumination, so Chris opened the door and leaned out. "Is anybody out here? Luke? Dr. Carey?" There was no reply. Chris glanced back at the others, all of who seemed fast asleep. He decided to risk raising his voice. "Hey, is anybody out there? Can anyone hear me? I'm one of the volunteers from Morpheus Pharmaceuticals." His voice echoed along the corridor, but nobody came. Nobody responded. Chris walked along the hall towards the distant light. His bare feet made a gentle slapping sound on the linoleum floor. I was sure this place had carpet everywhere, Chris thought. His bewilderment growing. Now the floor was covered in red and green stripes. What was that all about? He dismissed the notion. I probably wasn't paying close enough attention before. Chris kept walking towards the light. Is anybody there? Lloyd opened his eyes in time to see Chris leaving. Guess I didn't get the serum this time. Bummer. I was hoping for a free ride to the land of happy. Lloyd remembered the stash concealed inside his hat and smiled. Guess I'll make my own way there. After checking the others were still asleep, he took off his hat and reached inside. What the fuck? I don't remember leaving this in here. Lloyd pulled out an enormously fat plastic baggie crammed with dope and cigarette papers. How it all fit inside his hat defied reason. Hey, I'll just consider myself one lucky dude, Lloyd decided. Why would I need reason? Jesus. There was enough grass inside the bag to make a joint the size of my arm. A smile spread over the stoner's face. That sounded like a challenge, not only in the making of it, but more importantly, the smoking of it. He'd be shit-faced for a month, but the buzz would be unfucking believable. Let's do it. Lloyd quickly began assembling the makings, licking sheet after sheet of cigarette paper before gluing them together, creating a conical shape. Next, he filled the cone with grass, emptying the bag into it before sealing the joint at its thin end. Now all that remained was getting the mother of all joints lit, and then he'd be higher than a kite in a hurricane, man. Need a light? A figure was standing in the shadows by the door. Yeah, man, how'd you know? Lucky guess, the stranger replied. Come here. I've got what you need for the job. Cool. Lloyd scrambled from the bed, grabbed his monster joint, and hurried over to the stranger. The teenager shoved the thin end of the joint in his mouth and nodded. I'm ready, dude. The shadowy figure dragged a match down the wall, igniting it. He held the flame in front of him, the dancing light revealing scarred and burnt skin stretched taut across his features. You can't always get what you want, dude. But you get what you need? Lloyd said, completing the quotation. Good song, man, good song. Now come on, light me up, dude. You asked for it, fucker. The stranger flicked the match at Lloyd. It lit up the end of his joint, and Lloyd began sucking air into his mouth. But instead of inhaling fumes, the flames continued racing along the joint towards his face. Alex was flying, swooping and soaring above the suburbs. Below, she could see all of Springwood with its crisscross quilt pattern of streets and avenues spread across the ground. Looking down, Alex could see the townspeople going about their lives, mowing lawns, walking the dog, driving their cars, painting their picket fences. They were all too busy or self-absorbed to see her high in the clouds overhead. It looked like 1,000 other towns in Middle America. Flags hanging outside most of the houses and a car in every garage. Alex laughed among the clouds. The wind held her aloft, currents and eddies twisting and tumbling around her. Her arms stretched out sideways, balancing her in the sky. The sense of freedom was exhilarating, as if she had been released from the everyday world below. She was free to go where she wanted, to do what she wanted. If only her dad was here to enjoy this moment with her. Far below, a man emerged from 1428 Elm Street, walking towards a car parked nearby. Alex squinted to get a better look at his face. There was something familiar about the man, the way he held himself, the upright stance and relaxed gait. It couldn't be him, could it? Alex's mind rebelled at the possibility, but the girl was already imagining scenarios to explain his presence. Dad must have tracked him to Springwood, and he had come to visit, and she was too busy flying to be down there with him. Dad! Dad, I'm up here! Alex shouted, but he didn't hear her, didn't seem to notice. I need to get closer, she realized, and tilted her chest forward, dropping into a dive. She swooped down through the air, clouds whipping past, the cold air chilling her face and arms. Dad, wait, I'm coming! But the man continued to his car, opening the driver's door and getting inside. Not this time, Alex vowed. You're not getting away from me this time. She plunged headfirst at the ground in a steep dive, pulling up at the last possible moment and landed neatly on her feet, as if she was Supergirl. The car was set on the other side of the street, its engine idling. All the windows were tinted, but she could see a figure inside, the silhouette of a man in the passenger seat. She ran towards the car and beat on the driver's window with her fists. Dad, open up, it's me, Alex! For a few seconds, nothing happened, and she was afraid he would drive away. Then the driver's electric window slowly descended to reveal the car's interior. The man inside smiled at her, his lips parting to show a mouthful of blackened teeth and rotting gums. Hello, Alex. Come to Daddy. Heather was running late. Her transatlantic flight had been delayed. Her suitcases had been lost on the baggage carousel, and traffic from Charles de Gaulle Airport into the center of Paris was horrific. At last, she reached the venue and ran inside, out of breath and frantic with worry. She burst into the changing area, pushing past several startled, half-naked women to reach her chair. "Sorry I'm late, Jean-Paul," she called to the designer. "Nightmare journey. You wouldn't believe the horrors I went through to get here." The French fashion legend wagged an admonishing finger at her before delivering a playful kiss to the air above each cheek. "Heather, my dear, if you weren't the best, I would never forgive you. Hurry and change into your first outfit. You are to be on the catwalk any minute. Oui?" Heather nodded, grateful Jean-Paul understood her so well. She quickly shed her loose-fitting top and skirt before reaching for the clothes rail to one side. But all the hangers were empty, a long line of nothing waiting to be worn. "Hey, who took my outfits?" The other models shrugged or shook their heads, denying all knowledge. Heather called Jean-Paul back. "Sweetie, I can't change into my first outfit if I don't have one, can I? Tell one of the dressers to bring me the proper rail." Jean-Paul looked at her, perplexed, one hand ruffling his trademark bleach blonde hair. "But Heather, this is your rail. Don't you remember the theme for the show? The Emperor's New Clothes. It's all the rage this season. Everybody is going to be naked down the catwalk. Come on." "But look around you," he urged. "Do you see anybody wearing anything?" Heather searched the changing area and realized he was right. All the other models were stripping naked, removing the last of their lingerie before striding purposefully towards the catwalk entrance. "Are you sure about this?" "Ma chérie, darling, ma petite chow," Jean-Paul replied soothingly. "You of all people have nothing to fear from this. Are you not my beautiful princess?" "I suppose. Then get those things off and get out there. You're already late for your first trip down the catwalk." Heather shrugged and reached behind herself to undo the clasp of her bra, but the hook and eyes seemed to be stuck together, refusing to unclip. Jean-Paul rolled his eyes melodramatically and moved to help her. "Let me, princess." He clawed at the hatch but couldn't unfasten it. "What is wrong with this?" "Mon Joao, have you glued it together?" I don't know," Heather admitted. I don't remember." Jean-Paul threw his hands up in the air, exasperated. "Oh, just pull it off over your head. We haven't got time for this." Heather did as he urged, ripping the bra upwards until she was free of it. "The panties, too, they must go," he said, motioning frantically with his right hand. I'm doing it, Heather snapped, pushing her panties down to her ankles and then stepping out of them. "Satisfied?" The designer stared at her, horror in his eyes. "My darling, what have you been doing to yourself?" "What do you mean?" Heather looked down and gasped. Instead of young, toned teenage figure, she now had the body of a 70-year-old woman. Her breasts sagged towards the floor, while stretch marks fanned outwards across her stomach. The greatest shock was her pubic hair, which was turning gray before her eyes. What's happening?" Heather whispered. "This isn't my body." She looked to the designer for reassurance. "This isn't my body." Jean-Paul closed his eyes and began shoving her towards the catwalk entrance. "I don't care whose body it is. You've got to get out there. This is the biggest show of the year, and everyone is waiting to see you, to photograph you, to broadcast your image around the world. If you don't go out there now, I'll be ruined. "No, please," Heather begged. "Don't make me do this. Go now," Jean-Paul shouted and propelled her through the entrance out onto the catwalk. Thousands of flashbulbs went off from all directions, a dazzle of lights. Heather threw one hand in front of her eyes to shield them from the glare, while the other hand tried to cover her crotch. The audience gave a collective gasp when they saw her aging, drooping figure. "Please, this isn't my body," Heather told them. "You've got to believe me, this isn't my body." Then the laughter started. First one voice, then another, then dozens, all roaring with laughter at the pathetic figure caught in the stage lights, the sound stripping away the last of her dignity. Heather ran back towards the changing area, still feebly trying to cover herself from view. "Please don't laugh," she whimpered. "This isn't my body. It's not me." Jean-Paul was standing in her path, blocking any escape. "You don't escape your adoring public that easily," he snarled. "Get back out there." Heather burst into tears, unable to control her emotions any longer. Please don't make me, Jean-Paul. Anything but that. Jean-Paul smiled, but the grin was more of an evil leer, thin lips on a cruel face. When he spoke, his warm accent had become a bestial snarl. Do it, bitch! Heather felt 4 metal blades resting against her stomach. Or else I'll gut you where you stand. Insistent hammering on his bedroom door woke Peter up. What are you doing in there? His father shouted. You've been playing with that machine all night. Go to bed and let me get some goddamn sleep. Okay, Peter called back. He listened as his father stomped off to the bathroom. I must have fallen asleep while I was online, Peter realized. He looked at the page on screen and was grateful for the lock that stopped his father bursting in. The monitor was filled with thumbnails for a porn site. In each of the images, a teenage student with long red hair was progressively shedding her clothes until she was completely naked. The photos had apparently been taken by a hidden camera, the site a voyeur's paradise of stolen moments. Peter shook his head. How would I explain this? Dad would think I'm even more of a freak than he already does. A new window appeared in the center of the screen. Pop-ups, the bane of a geek's life. Peter sighed. The software he downloaded earlier should have prevented any pop-up from appearing on screen. He reached for his mouse, shifting the cursor so he could close the window. You don't want to do that, Peter, a soft feminine voice whispered. He stopped, startled at hearing his name spoken. His computer's audio channels were switched off, yet the words had definitely come from the machine, hadn't they? Peter switched the speakers on, then off again to make sure. They were definitely silent now. Must be a faulty circuit. There's nothing faulty with me, the voice sighed. Peter peered around the bedroom, past the piles of DVDs and computer games and crumpled clothes, trying to find where the words were coming from. I'm right here, she said, on your screen. Peter felt the hairs on his neck standing up. He turned to face his monitor. The teenage girl from the Voyeur website was smiling at him from the pop-up window. That's right, it's me, sugar, she giggled. I don't understand, he said. How did you... Shh, she said languidly, holding a finger to her lips, motioning him to silence. Don't spoil the moment by trying to explain it, Peter. Enjoy yourself. This must be a dream, he decided. I must have been given the serum, not the placebo. Dr. Carey said it could cause intense dreaming. And he was right, the girl replied. I'm Lauren. Hi, Peter said. Pleased to meet you, I guess? She shook her head, smiling at him. You don't have to introduce yourself to me, Peter. He shook his head. I don't know what you mean. How many times have you visited my websites? I'm not sure, once or twice at the most. Dozens of times, Peter. You've watched me getting undressed over and over again, and you've enjoyed watching me. I've seen how much you've enjoyed it, if you know what I mean. She winked at him. Peter could not stop himself blushing. You can see what I'm doing while I'm looking at you? Lauren nodded. Oh, yes. You're very enthusiastic, aren't you? Does your girlfriend know how you feel about me? I don't have a girlfriend, he admitted. Not yet, anyway. So you've been practicing for the big day? Something like that? Lauren smiled. How about I give you a hand? Peter frowned. What do you mean? She reached forward, and her hand emerged from the computer screen. Fingers first, then her palm and wrist, until all of her forearm was protruding from the monitor. Don't be coy, Peter. You know exactly what I mean. Oh, but this is impossible. You can't. This is a dream, Lauren said. Nothing's impossible in dreams. Now it's my turn to watch you get undressed. Peter stripped off his clothes eagerly. I don't care whether this is a dream or not, he thought. I'm going to enjoy every second while it lasts. As he straightened up, Lauren touched his back, her soft fingers stroking the skin. The hand slid downwards, curving round to grasp his buttocks, pinching the cheeks of his ass playfully. What a cute little butt you've got, Peter. Do you work out? No, he stammered, excitement getting the better of him. I go swimming 3 nights a week. Lauren's hand crept to his hip and reached around to his crotch. My, what a big boy you are. Let me get a look at you in the flesh. Peter slowly turned around, his movements guided by the hand caressing his groin. I was right, Lauren giggled. That's quite a handful you've got there. Peter closed his eyes and groaned as her fingers closed around him, the hand slowly sliding up and down. "Oh, God," he whispered. "I don't think I'll last long before oh, God." "Don't worry about that, Peter," she replied. "I've got something here that'll keep you distracted." "What's that?" he asked, another groan escaping from him. Suddenly the hand let go of him. "No, don't stop," he pleaded. Peter's eyes snapped open when he heard the sound of what he thought were knives. He looked down at the monitor, but the arm reaching from the screen wasn't Lauren's anymore. Instead, he saw something very different sticking out from a sleeve of a dirty red and green sweater. A frayed glove covered the hand, a glove with 4 slices of metal protruding from its fingers. The blades reached towards Peter's crotch, while a man's voice shouted at the teenager from the computer, "The first cut's the deepest, you little shit!" Kat woke up in a waiting room, the still air thick with the smell of cigarettes and incense. The walls were lined with posters of tattooed men, their bodies decorated with elaborate designs and multicolored inks. In front of her, a coffee table was laden with photo albums. The one on top labeled Holes in Shit. She reached forward and opened it up to the first page. The spread featured photos of different ears, each displaying a variety of studs and earrings. The following pages were devoted to more body-piercing photos, pierced eyebrows, noses, and tongues, then belly buttons and nipples. Kat had seen similar books in other tattoo and piercing parlors. The men and women who did this were proud of their efforts and often took pictures to chronicle their work. Kat continued flicking through the pages of the album, each spread more extreme than the last. She winced at the sight of pierced genitals, male and female. "I've had holes put through most parts of my body, but that's where I draw the line," she decided. Another turn of the page revealed even more disturbing photos. Piercings through eyelids, between fingers, even through the jaw. Shit! Who could do that to themselves? She was afraid to look at the last page in the album, but a terrible compulsion made her look. A woman was impaled on a massive spike, the bloody end driven into her back and out through her stomach. Kat threw the album to the floor in disgust, but it stayed open at the same page. She looked at the woman's face in the photograph and realized it was her face. What the fuck? I'd never let anyone do that. Not something like... "Kat Walker," a male voice called from beyond a red and green striped curtain separating the waiting room from the rest of the parlor. "You're next." Kat shook her head. "I've changed my mind. I'll just come back another day." "But you've got an appointment. You can't leave now." I've got to go," Kat insisted. She strode to the front door, but it refused to open. Heavy deadbolts snapped into place, one after another, locking themselves shut. Kat clawed at them with her fingers, but couldn't undo the bolts. She banged her fist on the door, calling to the pedestrians passing on the sidewalk, but none seemed to hear her. Hey, you, open the door! Somebody help me! Help me!" "I'll help you," a voice from beyond the curtain replied. The striped fabric was ripped aside, revealing a menacing figure. Kat couldn't see his face because of the shadow cast by a brown fedora hat, but the glinting metal spike clenched in one hand was all too familiar. It was the same spike she had seen in the photo, the one stabbed through her body. "What do you want to have pierced this time, bitch?" Chris had been walking for what felt like hours, but the end of the corridor never got any closer. He tried running, but the light in the distance remained as far away as before. "Hey, where are you going?" Chris recognized Luke's voice. At last, somebody was coming to see what was going on. Luke appeared beside him, holding the plaque from the testing room door. "I pressed the call button, but nobody came," Chris explained. "Yeah, sorry about that. I must have switched them off by mistake when I dimmed the lights." "So what's the problem?" Luke asked. Chris shrugged. "Nothing, I guess. I must have gotten the placebo. The others are still asleep in there." Luke shook his head. "None of you got the placebo." "But Peter said..." "You don't listen to that nerd, do you? I thought you were much smarter than that. Tell you what, why don't you prove how smart you are?" Luke hung the plaque on one of the corridor walls. He waved a hand across its surface, and most of the engraved words disappeared, leaving the names of the 2 doctors, G.F. Dower, D. Carey. Luke stepped back and pointed at the plaque. "Rearrange the letters and you'll find a secret." "You mean like an anagram?" "Exactly." Chris moved closer to the plaque, studying the letters, moving them around in his mind to create new words. "I think it's a name." "Very good," Luke said, standing behind Chris. "But whose name is it?" Freddie. The first word is Freddie." "That's right." Luke clapped his hand appreciatively on Chris's right shoulder. "Now what can you make from the rest of the letters?" It's Green... No, Krieg. Wait, I got it. It's Kruger. Freddy Krueger, Chris said, smiling briefly. But that faded from his features as he looked at the hand clasping his shoulder. It was now a battered glove with 4 razors gleaming in the dull light of the hallway. They slid across his shoulders to his neck, the edges pressing into the skin. Chris swallowed hard, not daring to move. "Who are you?" he whispered. "I'm your worst nightmare, and now I own you. All of you." Chapter 5. Lloyd dropped the huge joint and began stamping on it, crushing the flames beneath his sneakers. "Fuck, dude, that was not cool." He realized the man who had flicked the lit match at him was gone. "Hey, where'd you go?" The stranger reappeared behind Lloyd, chuckling to himself. But when he spoke, the words were inside Lloyd's head. "I think you'll need a roach clip to finish that, baby." Lloyd peered down at the discarded joint. Something was moving inside it. He leaned closer for a better look. Then dozens of cockroaches burst from the still smoking remains. "Fuck!" Lloyd stepped back, but the stranger's hands grabbed him by the shoulders and held him in place. The cockroaches scuttled across the floor to Lloyd, then started climbing his boots and onto his legs. Lloyd tried to kick them off, his legs dancing an impromptu jitterbug. But the roaches had already disappeared up inside his jeans. He could feel hundreds of insects scrambling up his thighs, moving closer to his. Alex was running along Elm Street, the car driven by that monster bearing down on her, inching closer, his maniacal laughter echoing in her ears. She wanted to run off the road, to find some way of escaping, but her legs kept stumbling forward, as if they had a mind of their own. "Run, little bitch! Run while you still can! When Daddy catches you, he's gonna turn you into a real woman! He's gonna rip you in two!" The car's engines roared louder as it accelerated towards her. Alex stumbled and fell, sprawling on the asphalt, tensing herself for the crunch of metal against her body, the final crushing blow. Heather felt the blade slicing across her abdomen, cutting into the skin. Blood spurting outwards. She clasped at the wounds, trying to hold them together, to staunch the bleeding, but it was hopeless. She sank to the catwalk, crimson pooling around her body, begging the audience to help her, but they stayed in their seats laughing and pointing at her naked, pathetic body. Photographers and cameramen closed in for a better angle, shouted at her to look up, to give them a smile. Heather saved her bloody hands at them. But the torment continued as her life leaked out across the... Peter gasped as the knives cut deep into him, slicing through his groin as if it was butter. Something fell to the floor, and then blood was spurting from the open wound, gouts of red spraying the computer screen. Peter staggered backwards, clutching at his crotch, staring down at himself. He screamed and screamed, his voice a squeal of horror to his own hearing. A man's snarling face was visible on the monitor, his features tinted red by the splashes of blood still running down the screen. He was laughing at Peter while licking the crimson edges of his fingerknives. "How neat! Sweet meats!" Peter could feel darkness engulfing him, a cold numbness already spreading down his legs. Kat smashed her fist against the door of the tattoo and piercing parlor, but the glass panel did not break. Behind her, she could hear him coming closer, light glinting on the spike in his hand. Kat threw herself sideways, escaping the first stab of metal. There was no escape in the waiting room. The empty space was cluttered with chairs and the photo albums, images of pain spilling from every page. She staggered away, backing past the red and green curtain deeper into the salon. She took another step backwards, but there was no floor beneath her foot. Kat twisted around to see a pit underneath, the bottom lined with silver spikes all pointing upwards. "No, no!" she cried, her arms waving in the air, trying to regain her balance. But it was too late. Kat fell over backwards, tumbling towards the... Chris sat bolt upright in bed, his breath coming in gulps, and his chest falling and rising rapidly as he gasped for air. He touched his throat carefully, but the blades were gone, the finger knives no longer slicing into his neck. It had been a dream, a very vivid dream. So much for getting the placebo. "That's it, I'm out of here," Chris decided. Then he looked at the others. All 5 were thrashing around in their cots, faces contorted with agony, hands beating or clawing at their bodies as if fighting off invisible attackers. "Shit, I have to help them." Chris sprang from his bed, going to Heather's side first. She was whimpering and sobbing, begging for help. her hands scrabbling at the bed covers. The material of her t-shirt had been sliced apart in 4 places. Chris grabbed Heather by the arms and started shaking her violently. "Heather, wake up! Heather, you're in a nightmare! Wake up now!" Her eyes snapped open and she screamed an agonized cry of pain and terror. "It's okay, it's me. It's Chris, you're safe." Heather blinked twice, the scream dying on her lips. She looked down at her body, then relaxed, her shoulders slumping forward. It's okay, It was a nightmare." Chris nodded, smiling at her. "That's right, it was a nightmare. A bad dream brought on by the serum, I guess. You okay now?" Heather sat up again and winced, one hand reaching for her stomach. "I don't know," she admitted. "Stay here," Chris commanded. "I've got to wake the others." He ran across to Kat's bed. She was screaming abuse and flailing at the air with her arms, battering Chris as he leant over her, pinning her arms to the mattress. "Kat, wake up!" he shouted. "Wake up!" She opened her eyes and started sobbing. "You're safe now," he said soothingly. "Are you hurt?" Kat shook her head. She looked around the room, dazed. "Alex? You okay?" Alex was crouched on top of her bed, one hand thrown forward as if holding something at arm's length. "Keep away from me, you bastard! Keep away!" Beyond her, Peter was curled into a fetal position, moaning and sobbing, while Lloyd was clawing at his own face, gibbering incoherently. "We've got to help them," Chris said. Kat was already out of her bed, moving to Alex. Chris ran to Peter while shouting to Heather, "You've got to wake Lloyd before he hurts himself." Peter snapped awake as soon as Chris touched him, while Alex fainted when Kat woke her. But Heather could not get close to Lloyd because the movements were too frenzied. Chris punched the red button above Peter's bed, hoping this time it would work. He ran to the door and yelled along the corridor when Luke appeared in the distance. "Get the doctor! Something's wrong with Lloyd!" "Oh, shit," Heather whispered. "It's him!" Chris spun around to see a figure standing over the thrashing figure of Lloyd. It was a man in a dirty red and green striped sweater, blood-stained jeans, and boots, his skin a mess of half-healed scars and burns. "You! What the fuck are you doing here?" Kat demanded. "No need to swear," the figure admonished. "We're all friends here, aren't we?" "You're no friend of ours," Kat shouted. "We don't even know your name." "It's Kruger." Remembering the anagram from his dream, Chris said, "Yeah, it's Kruger. His name is Freddy Krueger." Kruger smiled, a twisted sneer of amusement. He flexed his right hand to show off the finger knives dancing in the low lighting. "See? You do know me. Some better than others, isn't that right, Alex?" She had regained consciousness. Kat was holding her back, stopping Alice from trying to attack their tormentor. "Fuck you, Kruger. Let Lloyd go." The monster laughed at her. "I'll let him go if you call me Daddy, bitch." "Never. You're not my father. You're just some sick fuck from our nightmares," Alex screamed back. "We'll see," Kruger replied. He gestured at Lloyd, who was still hitting himself and shouting incoherently. "This one thinks he's being eaten alive by cockroaches. Why don't I help him out?" Kruger rested one of his blades close to Lloyd's hairline, then sliced across the forehead. Lloyd's scrabbling fingers reached towards the loose flap of skin. "No!" Chris shouted. He flung himself at the bed, but Kruger smashed a backhanded blow into Chris's head, sending him back across the room. Kruger leaned closer to Lloyd and whispered in his ear, "The roaches are getting under your skin, boy. You need to get them out. Now." Lloyd's fingers closed around the loose flap of skin at his forehead and tore it downwards. The skin peeled away, exposing raw flesh and bone underneath. The others staggered back or cried out, Peter involuntarily vomiting on the floor. "Now Lloyd is really getting shit-faced," Kruger laughed, rejoicing in their disgust. "Ha ha 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 ha." He pointed his finger knives at the 5 teenagers. "I'll see you in the nightmares. You're my children now." He began laughing again. The sound of footsteps could be heard running towards the room. Kruger gave them a wave, then faded away. Luke burst into the room, switching on all the lights. "What the fuck?" 5 of the volunteers were standing around one of the beds. Blood and vomit was spattered on their clothing and pulled across the floor. But worst of all was the grisly figure sprawled on the cot. Lloyd. It must be him. Luke decided this by judging by the hair and clothing, which was a bloody mess. He resembled one of those drawings Luke remembered from anatomy class that showed what the human head looked like with its skin removed. The eyeballs and teeth were still normal, but the rest of the face was a crimson smear of torn flesh and muscles. The exposed white bones shining under the lights. Blood gurgled from either side of the mouth and flaps of skin peeled back from Lloyd's features, hanging down towards the pillow beneath. "What the hell happened?" Luke demanded, but the others didn't reply. Their faces were blank masks of disbelief, their heads shaking from side to side. Luke reached his fingers past the tattered flaps of skin to Lloyd's neck, checking for a pulse. "Thank Christ he's still alive." Dr. Carey was next to arrive, hurrying into the room as Luke dialed a telephone by the door. "What are you doing? What is—" Carey's voice trailed off as he saw the faceless figure on the bed. "Paramedics! We need the paramedics!" "That's who I'm calling, you stupid bastard!" Luke snarled back. "Get over there and try and keep Lloyd alive until they get here. He's going into shock." Alex watched numbly as Carey and Dower battled to keep Lloyd breathing. The other volunteers were comforting each other, trying to stay calm. But Alex felt a quiet detachment from everything happening around her. It was as if she was watching events on television and was not even in the same room. "For all I know, I'm still in a dream, a nightmare. Any minute now, I'll open my eyes and be home again. Mom will be calling me down for breakfast, and I'll—" "Alex? Are you all right?" Alex frowned. Something important had happened here. Something. "Alex! Can you hear me? Alex!" A vicious slap across the face snapped Alex back to reality. She glared at Kat, who was standing over her, hand drawn back and ready to deliver another hit. "What the hell are you doing?" Alex shouted at her. Kat smiled apologetically. "Sorry, but you were falling asleep again. I didn't want you having another dream, not until we get out of this place." Alex looked around the room. They were back in the Katja Institute's waiting area, among the lime green sofas and brown carpet. Chris was comforting Heather, while Peter was curled up in a corner, not looking at anybody. Kat stood over Alex, staring at her. "Is it time to start the drug trial yet?" Alex asked. "Start? It's already happened," Kat replied. "What, you think everything we went through was a dream?" "I wasn't sure," Alex admitted. "What about Lloyd? I saw him peeling off his own face. That couldn't have been real, could it?" The sound of people running became audible, getting louder and closer. "Clear the way!" a female paramedic shouted as she hurried into the waiting room, dragging a stretcher on wheels behind her. Another paramedic ran behind the stretcher, pushing it towards the main entrance, while shouting updates about the patient's condition. Their voices were strained. "See for yourself," Kat said, pointing at the body on the stretcher. Lloyd was strapped down, his fingers still twitching, his clothes stained crimson by all the blood. A neck brace had been applied to stop him thrashing about. Above it was a red smear of bandages and tubes, hair matted with blood. Lloyd's mouth screamed wordlessly, expelling inhuman noises of pain and fear. Alex sank back on the sofa. It was true. It had all happened. Even the dream. If I had died in my dream, I would have died for real, Alex realized. She didn't know how she knew that, but she did. The creature that attacked Lloyd, who had tried to run her down in her dream. He had been the orderly who cut her arm in the first nightmare. The one she'd had at home. Somehow it was all connected. It all meant something, but what? Dr. Carey had followed the stretcher out into the waiting area. His pristine white coat was now smeared with blood, a crumpled red handprint visible where Lloyd had tried to push the physician away. Carey watched as the paramedics loaded Lloyd into their ambulance and drove away. Once the vehicle was out of sight, Carey remembered the other volunteers. He looked at them in turn before speaking, his face heavy with worry. "What about the rest of you? How do you feel?" Chris stood up and glared at the doctor. "We're fine, physically." "What was that shit you gave us?" Kat demanded. "I told you, it's an anti-insomnia drug that—" "Bullshit!" Chris shouted, throwing himself at Carey, pushing the doctor against a pillar. "Our friend ripped his own face off like it was a Halloween mask. Tell us the truth or else I'll do the same thing to you. Who is Freddy Krueger and why is he after us?" Carey shook his head. Alex could see the doctor was bewildered and had not recognized the name of their tormentor. "Chris, let him go. He doesn't know." Chris glared into Carey's eyes, searching for answers. Eventually he released the doctor and stepped back, hands held up in the air. Carey tried to regain his composure, straightening his clothes, and he cleared his throat. "Look, I know what's happened has been a terrible shock for all of you. Yeah, especially Lloyd, Kat interjected sarcastically. But we're still trying to determine why it happened. Luke has told me some of you may not be 21 years of age. Is that correct? We're still in high school, you moron. Oh, God, Carrie breathed. Then this will have to be a police matter. If you provided false information in those medical questionnaires, there's no question of direct liability on the part of Morpheus Pharmaceuticals. The drug trial is being suspended immediately until we can be certain there is no contaminant or foreign substance within the serum. I have contacted the parent or parents listed on your consent forms, and they should be here to collect you shortly. No doubt the police will want to question you at some point in the next day or two. Whether your friend would be able to answer those questions? Carrie glanced hopelessly towards the main doors. It was his second dose, Peter said quietly from the corner. What did you say? Peter approached the doctor. Lloyd, he took part in the same drug trial last Friday. This was his second dose of your serum. But that's impossible, Carrie replied. Volunteers are only allowed to participate once, due to the hallucinogenic qualities of the serum. Kat laughed mirthlessly. That's why he did it. Told us your drug was all that and more. Your orderly, Luke, he was splitting his finder's fees with Lloyd. We'll be ruined, Carrie muttered, shaking his head. What about Lloyd? Heather demanded. Look what your serum did to him. What has it done to us? I don't understand. He's coming for us, Heather hissed at the doctor. He's coming for all of us now. He's already put Lloyd in a coma. What's he going to do to us? Who? Carrie asked. Who are you talking about? Chapter 6. Kruger. His name is Fred Kruger. Alex was back at home, sitting on a chair in the kitchen and being interviewed by an overweight cop from the Springwood Police Department. Officer Goodman was scribbling down everything she said in his notebook, but that gave him pause. He peered at Alex intently. Did you say Kruger? Yes, why? The cop shrugged and shook his head. I just want to make sure I get all the facts right for my report. How would you spell that? How the fuck should I know? Alex! Her mom walked into the kitchen, lighting a cigarette. The officer is just trying to do his job. Don't swear at him. Goodman smiled at Alex insincerely. That's okay, ma'am. She's been through a traumatic experience. No telling what effect it's having on her. Her memory of what happened is likely to be a little scrambled. My memory is fine, officer, Alex insisted. I didn't get a chance to ask the bastard how to spell his name when he was trying to run me down or when he was helping to peel off Lloyd's face. But if I had to guess, I'd say K-R-U-E-G-E-R. Goodman nodded but didn't write down the name. And you say he was in your dream? He was in all of our dreams, Alex replied. And exactly how do you know that? The cop asked. Alex frowned. I'm not sure, she admitted. We didn't get a chance to talk about what happened before our parents arrived, but somehow I know he appeared in all of our dreams, all of our nightmares. She gave a detailed graphic description of Kruger and what he had done. Uh-huh. Goodman closed his notebook, not bothering to take down any more of what Alex had said. Well, it's obvious you've had quite a shock. I suggest you try and get some rest. When you're feeling better, why don't you come down to the station and see if you can pick this Kruger out of some mug shots. His name is Kruger, not Kruger. Alex pointed at the notebook. You didn't even write his name down. But the cop ignored her, turning to talk with Alex's mom. Mrs. Corwin, you might want to give your daughter some sleeping tablets or mild sedatives if you've got any in the house. Why are you treating me like a child? Why are you ignoring me? Alex demanded. She grabbed Goodman's shoulders, intending to twist him round to face her. But instead she was knocked back by a wave of emotions, fear, anger, and panic. Alex tumbled into her seat, rocked by what she had witnessed. You already know him. What? The cop swiveled round and stared at Alex. What did you say? You already know Kruger. You've heard of him before. Alex blinked, still processing the feelings she had perceived when touching Goodman. You're afraid of him. Afraid of what will happen if other people start hearing his name. Why? Tell me. I don't know what you're talking about, the cop insisted. His face flushed with anger. If you'll excuse me, I have to go. Plenty more people to see yet. You're not going to do anything about this, Alex said accusingly. You believe if you'll do nothing, maybe this will go away. Well, you're wrong. She closed her eyes, exhaustion overtaking her. Dead wrong. Goodman shook his head. I don't know where this is coming from, young lady, but you're the one who's in the wrong here. You lied on a medical form, illegally took part in a drug trial, and are now making wild allegations based on nothing more than something you've seen in a bad dream. Not a bad dream, a nightmare. Have it your own way. The cop turned to Alex's mom. Could I talk to you outside for a few minutes, ma'am? She smiled thinly. Of course. Alex, why don't you go on up to bed, honey? You look exhausted. The officer is right. Some sleep would do you good. I'm fine, Alex spat back. Her mom followed Goodman to his patrol car out on the street. Alex watched them from the kitchen window, the policeman resting a comforting hand on her mom's left shoulder. The cop gave a last glance at the house before driving away. Alex had felt a shudder of fear and revulsion emanating from him. He must have been one of the officers called to this house when the murder happened, before we moved in. No, it was more than that. There were feelings of loathing and quiet terror inside of him, too. Goodman was frightened of the house, of what it represented. Joyce came back inside and insisted that Alex go to bed. I don't care whether you're tired or not. You need to rest. And don't think you're going anywhere this weekend either. You are grounded for a month. Grounded? Christ, Mom, I almost died today. You ditched school, took part in a drug trial without my consent, and as for the wild stories you were telling, that poor officer? It was all true, Mom. Why don't you believe me? You lied to me this morning, Alexandra. Why should I believe you now? Alex let herself be led upstairs. She recognized that obstinate look on her mother's face. It was the same look she got once her mind was made up. Like mother, like daughter. Right now her mom would brook no opposition, and Alex knew better than to try. But that didn't mean she was meekly going to sleep. Shit, after what I've seen today, Alex thought, I might never sleep again. Peter's trip home from the Kacha Institute with his father was one long, stony silence. It was only when they were inside the house that the questions started. What was Peter doing there? Why did he volunteer for the drug trial? Why did he cut school? Was this some kind of teenage rebellion? Because that wasn't going to be allowed. Not in this house. Not while you're under my roof, young man. You live by my rules or you don't live here at all. On and on it went, the lecturing, the questions, the demands for answers that went ignored. You know I had to give up a day's work to come and collect you. I'm going to be docked a day's pay. Well, you'll be paying for that out of your pocket. No allowance for the next 6 months. Why can't you be more like other teenagers? You spend all day on that computer when you could be out playing sports like any normal kid. Peter felt the rage boiling inside, but kept it bottled up, not wanting to give his father dissatisfaction. It was only when the old man went for the ultimate veto, Peter snapped. No more computer. You can't be trusted to do the right thing, so you can't be trusted to have the computer in your room. For Christ's sakes, Dad! That earned Peter a smack across the face. Don't you take the Lord's name in vain, boy. Like you give a shit about the Lord's name unless it suits you. Brian O'Mahony stood over his son, ready to strike him again. Peter glared at his father, unabashed. You want to hit me again? Do it. Just do it. If it'll make you feel like a man. That's all you understand, isn't it? How dare you talk to me this way? You will learn to respect your elders and betters, or else you will suffer the consequences. You might be my elder, but you certainly aren't my better. Take that back, or else you'll what? Beat me so hard I end up in the hospital like Mom? You should have gotten cancer, Dad, not her. Brian undid his belt and tugged it through the loops on his jeans. I've heard enough of your smart mouth for one day. Like you'd know anything about having a smart mouth. You want to hear something funny, Dad? Stop calling me that. I'm not that smart myself. There are kids at school way smarter than me. You know the difference between them and me? Shut your mouth, boy. They coast along, getting by on natural ability, while I'm busting my ass studying every hour of the fucking day and night to keep up with them. I said shut your mouth. I used to do it so I could win a trophy at the end of the year awards ceremony. I knew I'd never win a sports trophy like you did at school, but I figured any kind of trophy was better than none at all. That's it. I warned you. Now I'm going to hurt you. Peter's father clenched the belt buckle in his palm, then coiled the strap around his hand, leaving 2 feet of leather hanging there. I did it because I wanted you to be proud of me, but you never came to the awards ceremony. Not once. I brought home 12 trophies and you never congratulated me. Never said a fucking word. Brian thrashed the leather strap down on his son. Then I realized what I was doing wrong. It's not that you don't care about my academic achievements. You're threatened by them. You think I make you look stupid. You want to know something? You're right. Shut up, you little bastard. Shut your fucking mouth. Peter's father hit him with the belt again. I can't wait for the day I go to college, Dad. And when that day comes, you will never fucking hear from me again. Damn you, boy. Damn you to hell. Peter glared at his father. I'm already there, Dad. I'm already there. Heather retreated to her room once her mom had gotten them home. No doubt the old bitch wanted a heart-to-heart, mother and daughter conversation. But Heather couldn't cope with another dose of lies and hypocrisy. There had to be more to life than beauty pageants and modeling contracts, or finding a rich and handsome husband to pay all the bills. There had to be more to life than joining the ladies who lunch, or the women who played tennis in the morning before fucking the club pro at his apartment in the afternoon. There had to be more to life than paying homage to the gin bottle, downing mid-morning pick-me-ups, more to life than charge cards and lusting after dishwater repairmen. Plastic surgery, sunbeds, boob jobs, Botox, padded bras, hair dye, shit. There had to be more to life than all of that, right? Heather sat in front of the mirror and stared at her own reflection. How often had she puked up lunch to stay thin? How many cigarettes had she smoked to stifle her appetite? How many times had she let one of the jocks fill her up to make sure she stayed popular with all the right boys? Princess, are you all right in there? The words were slurred together, the ice cubes clinking in a glass. Mom was enjoying her late-night therapy. I'm fine, Heather replied wearily. I think I'll get some sleep. Okay, darling. We all need our beauty sleep. Yes, Mom. Heather stared at her reflection, but the face in the mirror belonged to Lloyd. She watched as the red line appeared across his forehead, blood trickling downwards from the sideways cut. Then Lloyd's hands reached up and began tugging at the skin, tearing it down, peeling it away. Heather closed her eyes, trying to steady her breathing. It was the same sequence of events replaying themselves over and over in her mind. I don't know if I'll ever be able to look in a mirror again, Heather thought. She was exhausted, but the prospect of falling asleep, of slipping back into that nightmare, filled her with horror. Anything but that. She waited until her mom had staggered downstairs before sneaking out to raid the plethora of pills in the bathroom. There must be something here to keep sleep away. One night without dreams and I'll be okay. Amidst all the Prozac and Valium, Heather found a plastic bottle of No-Dose, with 3 tablets rattling around inside it. She dry swallowed the pills before retreating to her bedroom and locking the door. It was going to be a very long night. What were you thinking? Have you any idea how badly this reflects on us as parents? It had been Chris's mother who collected him from the Katja Institute. But that only delayed the inevitable tirade from his father. Mr. Harris finally got in at 8, after he worked late at the office. Gideon insisted on eating his evening meal before dealing with his son. Once the dishes were done, Chris was summoned to explain himself and his actions. He made a few halting excuses but was quickly cut short. His father sat at the kitchen table while his mother stood meekly to one side. We try to live our lives as pillars of the community, showing respect for others and hoping for their respect in return. How was what you did today showing respect for your mother and I? Dad, this wasn't about you, Chris began. I know rebellion when I see it, and I see it in your eyes tonight. You would set aside everything we've worked for to satisfy yourself. Is that it? No, You'll speak when I say you speak. Is that understood? Yes, sir. That's better. Now answer my question. Have you any idea how badly your actions reflect upon us as parents? I don't know. Chris stared at the kitchen floor, ashamed of himself. Look at me when I'm talking to you, son. Chris forced himself to meet his father's gaze. That's better. Now answer my question. Why don't you ask if I'm all right? I beg your pardon? I thought I was going to die today, but all you seem to care about is your reputation. Your standing in the community. Doesn't that seem a little selfish to you, sir? How dare you speak to your mother and I like that? Mom hasn't said a word. She never does. She's too frightened to contradict you. Chris snapped. He swallowed hard. Shit, we're into it now, he thought. There was no easy way out from where this was heading. Say that again? You heard me. Gideon Harris stood abruptly, his chair skidding backwards across the kitchen floor. You will apologize this instant. Why should I? You couldn't give a shit about what happens to me. As long as I get my scholarship, as long as I turn professional, as long as I bring in the bucks and make you rich, you'll be proud, you'll be happy. All you care about is having everybody respect you, having people point you out in the street and say, there goes Gideon Harris, his son's a basketball star. You don't know what you're... Yeah, everybody will respect you and everybody will forget that you're black because that's what you really want, isn't it, Dad? Go to your room, Christopher. No, for once in your life, you're going to listen to what I want to say. You're going to hear me out. All the respect in the world won't change a thing. You'll still be ashamed of what you are. Chris's father began ushering his wife towards the kitchen door. We don't have to listen to this abuse. We're going to bed. You can't change the color of your skin, Dad. It doesn't matter what I do. Gideon pushed his wife aside and grabbed the front of Chris's shirt. Go on, hit me, Dad, his son snarled. Show me exactly what kind of parent you really are. Father and son glared at each other until finally Gideon turned away, shaking his head. You disappoint me, son, he said quietly, then left. Chris sank into a chair and wept. Kat could not help smiling. She'd had to walk home from the Kacha Institute because neither of her parents came to collect her. Typical fucking typical. They'd rather be out bothering God or bashing a Bible than making sure their own flesh and blood was home safe. Then again, I haven't given them much reason to care about me, she admitted. You can only abuse a person's beliefs so far before they gave up on you. Guess that makes me a lost cause. Kat smiled again. Isn't there a patron saint for people like me? When she did get home, it was dusk, and the rest of the family was busy saying their evening prayers. Kat rolled her eyes and went straight to her room. She'd never been close to anyone at Springwood High. Sure, she'd hung out with the more extreme elements for kicks, but mostly they were prime-time, grade-A assholes. It was moments like this when Kat wished she wasn't quite so self-reliant. Having a friend to talk to wouldn't be that bad right about now. But who would believe what she had witnessed today? Only the other 4 volunteers and Lloyd. But Lloyd wasn't talking to anybody. Chris was way too straight for Kat's liking, and as for Princess Heather, forget it. An after-hours chat with Dork Squad Peter didn't bear thinking about either. But Alex, there was something different about her. Kat had spotted the scars on Alex's forearms, suicidal tendencies or something else. Then there was the punk hairstyle and the no-nonsense attitude. Everything about Alex screamed, stay away, leave me alone. Kat recognized a kindred spirit when she saw one. Yeah, I could stand talking to Alex. The phone in Kat's bedroom rang, startling her. She'd had a private line installed a year ago to stop her parents listening in on conversations. It had the additional bonus of stopping addled stoners like Lloyd ringing the rest of her family during Bible studies and talking shit down the phone at them. Kat waited 3 rings before picking up the receiver. She spoke without thinking, somehow already knowing who was calling. Alex, is that you? Yeah, the other girl replied. How did you... Never mind. Funny, I was thinking about you, Kat said. You needed someone to talk to? Yeah, me too. There was a long pause before either of them spoke again, Kat eventually breaking the silence. Fuck, that must have been some weird shit they gave us today. I had this nightmare, a real freaking horror show. Tell me about it, Alex urged. When Kat was done, it was Alex's turn. She recalled her flying dream, how it had been twisted and warped. When Kruger was standing over Lloyd, he said you knew him better than the rest of us. Kat remembered. He wanted you to call him Daddy. What the fuck was that all about? In her bedroom, Alex sighed. She hadn't wanted to talk about her other nightmare, the one with the psychiatrist, but she couldn't lie to Kat either. They were both involved in this, and they had to stick together. So Alex forced herself to relive the nightmare, detailing it all down the phone, every embarrassing revelation. When she'd finished, there was only silence. "Kat, you still there?" "Yeah, still here. How long have you been cutting yourself?" "I did it for about 3 years after my dad left us. Mom found out and made me see every shrink on the East Coast. At least that's what it felt like. Eventually I met this woman in therapy who used to cut herself too, and she persuaded me to stop. I haven't taken a razor myself for months. Not until that dream the other night." "But that wasn't you, don't you see? That was Kruger. He cut you in the nightmare. So you got cut in real life too. That's how he hurt Lloyd." Alex peeled the dressing away from her arm and looked at the 4 wounds. For a moment she thought she could see tiny maggots crawling out of the cuts, their minute mouths feeding on her blood and skin and flesh and... "Alex, you still awake?" Her eyes snapped open. "Fuck! Every time I drift off, I start having another nightmare." "Try coffee and pills," Kat suggested. "I'd offer you some speed, but my usual supplier is currently in a coma at Springwood General Hospital." "Lloyd?" "Yeah, I phoned and got his condition. He's still in intensive care. Critical but stable, whatever that's supposed to mean." Alex had felt something earlier, a shared pain between her and Kat. "Why did you ask how long I'd been cutting myself? Did you used to..." No, of course not." Alex frowned. "If we start lying to each other, we're fucked. We both need someone to trust. God knows there's not many other candidates on offer." "You're right," Kat agreed. "But I didn't cut myself. I used to... Cigarettes, that was my thing. I used to put them out on myself, on my skin." "Jesus," Alex winced. "That's why you got all the tattoos, isn't it?" "How did you..." Kat's voice trailed off. "It's strange. Ever since we were injected with that drug, it's like I'm different. I can't explain it, but I keep getting little flashes. Like I know something's going to happen. But before it does, like when you phoned, I knew it was you before I picked up." "Me too," Alex agreed. "Not glimpses of the future, though. It's as if I can sense what people are feeling. Like I'm tuned into their emotions like a radio." "Radio-free, Alex?" "Something like that. For all we know, we're both still asleep at the Kacha Institute, and this is the dream," Kat suggested. "Wouldn't that be a mindfuck?" Alex kicked off her shoes and lay back on her bed. "Yeah, but this is all real. I can feel it, sense it. Always know when I'm in a dream. I've always known. Makes me feel safe no matter what's happening. At least, it used to. Until we met Kruger? Yeah. Hey, is it true you've never what?" Kat laughed. "Done the dirty deed?" "Oh, that." Alex grimaced. "Not yet. At least, not with anyone else. What about you?" "Me? I'm the slut of Springwood according to my parents. But I've got my standards. I don't do it with anybody younger than me, and nobody over 25. And it's overrated. I'm not saying sex isn't a rush, but, well, you'll see." The phone clicked twice, and Alex heard her mom's voice. "Honey, are you on the other line?" "Yes, Mom, I am. Could I please have some privacy?" "Sorry," Joyce hung up hurriedly. "I better go. Mom's wound up enough after what the cops said." "Someone came looking for me earlier, but I hadn't made it home by then." "What did he say?" "I didn't hear what he told her, but the blame's all going on us. I told him about Kruger, and he wouldn't even write the bastard's name down. It was like the cop already knew about him, but didn't want to admit Kruger existed. I've got 2 rules I live by. Never trust the pigs and never trust your parents," Kat said. "I'll talk to you tomorrow." "Yeah, I need some sleep, but I'm scared shitless of closing my eyes." "I know what you mean. Good night." "Good night," Alex said and hung up. Coffee and pills. Better hope we've got something besides decaffeinated coffee downstairs. I wonder what Peter's doing right now. She felt like seeing him. Maybe they could keep each other awake. Okay. This has been chapters 4, 5, and 6 of A Nightmare on Elm Street, Suffer the Children. I wanted to make a little bit longer video tonight to make up for the short one yesterday. Hope everybody's enjoying the story so far. I uploaded pretty much a roadmap of my plans for finishing these books off. You can check out the video on my channel. Guys, please drop me a like on these videos. Please comment and let me know what you think about everything so far. I'd really like your input. I'd really appreciate your likes on the videos. If you haven't already, then please subscribe and click the bell for future updates. I'm really enjoying doing this. I'm enjoying reading the books for the first time. I hope you're enjoying hearing them. So until next time, have a good night, sleep well, and watch out for nightmares.